Welcome everybody to this edition of Beers with Bill. It's my great pleasure to welcome back Nick Baird, the co-founder of Beerlab in London. Nick, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me again, everybody. Thank you for inviting me.
It's always fun. I mean, I keep waiting for when we finally get that punk rock band together with you, Keith, and a few others.
Oh, well, I haven't talked to Keith since the Bose, whatever the Bose selling, I guess we'll say. So I haven't seen him in a bit. So I've been trying to get down to Guelph. So
yeah, so you knew he was no longer in the beer industry, eh?
I figured he was going to kind of part ways, know.
Yeah. So he's working with his sister.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's enjoying it.
Well, he needed a break. He was that man was unstoppable in the beer industry. So
absolutely. And he was getting burned out.
Oh,
in that process.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're starting out with the Through the Cloud Lager tonight.
Through the Clouds Lager, yeah. I don't know if people had a chance to read about it or tried it before yet. This was a batch that we had the opportunity to brew offsite. We needed something for the summer. When we started looking at projections and numbers and everything opening back up, Adele and I looked at each other and said, we're kind of up the creek without a paddle unless we get some lager in tank. And if you've been to the brewery, you remember we're like 5-barrel brew house, so we're super tiny. So we talked to our friend Pratt at Powerhouse, and he is the head brewer at Powerhouse now. He was at Equals Brewing Company in London, and he brewed 2 contract batches for us with very specific rules and regulations at Equals. So we were very confident that he was going to be able to help us out. So we had an opportunity to use a 50 hectoliter tank with Adele and I on the brew deck for the 2 days to fill it. So this is a double decocted, traditional, in every sense of the word, Czech lager. We brought in Raven floor malted Pilsner malt, which is, Bim uses a ton of that in all his stuff. It's sort of the best option for Czech malts in the province right now that we found. It was fresh crop saws, selected from about 4 different lots that we kind of asked for samples of. And it was Pilsner Urquell H-type yeast strain on this as well too. So we had Pratt rejig his entire brew house to help us decoct on it. He brewed a batch before we came in just to make certain it worked. And yeah, we had a month of primary fermentation in ramp down, and then we had cold ferment. This fermented at like 7 degrees centigrade. And then we had a week and a half of ramp down, and then we had 9.5 weeks of lager on this beer. So this is as proper as we can make it. This beer is completely naturally carbonated. It overcarbonated, if I'm being fully honest. We got 2.78 volumes of carb on this beer through natural spunding. Luckily, they just installed a brand new Cody canning line at Powerhouse, so counter pressure filled, so it can handle the higher volume of pressure. So I don't know. It tastes like pretty much like fresh Czech lager to me. When my wife and I went to Prague, we just drank Pilsner Urquell, Staroprom, and Kozel, whatever we get our hands on, in every single pub we get our hands on. So yeah. So we've got a lot of it. If you're into it, feel free. And it's in short cans, which is super handy.
Yep.
So
yeah. Why the decision to go with the short can?
Just market trends with talking to bottle shops, licensees. So when we were first releasing beers to licensees and bottle shops, we were all short cans. That's all we packed everything in. We had a long talk with Thomas Moran at Volo, and he basically said, I can't sell your beer, not because it's not good beer, but because your IPAs are in short cans and everyone wants tall cans. So as soon as we started switching tall cans, everything started moving so much better. So with the mobile canning company, it's a setup charge. Every time we change the machine, there's a different cost. So we're like, okay, one thing across the board. When it came to doing all our lagers were slow, and all the bottle shops like, well, everyone likes short cans for lagers. They want to drink 12 ounces and on to the next beer. So we're kind of rocking a hard place. So we just said short cans for the big batch. Let's make it easy on everybody. So, we're still making lager in-house this year. That was our project for the spring, summer, and early fall. We're committing one tank to a 6-week turnaround time, trying to understand how we can change and make a proper lager in a 6-week window. So I just brewed it yesterday. So it's single decoction in our house in Beerlab. And then the catch for us is that we're trying to use different Pilsner malts or malts the entire time.
Yeah.
So that's the main difference, is that we're trying to see what works best. Is there something that is producing a crisper flavor, more American style, more Czech style, more German style? We're all over the place. So this is our 5th lager in-house, I want to say, this year, 4th or 5th, and everyone's been different. So it's fun. It's a fun project. So
Sounds like you can hear it in your voice that you're enjoying doing it.
IPAs for 2 years, man. It gets a little, the train's on the tracks. Just let's go, Not that I don't love IPAs, but when the opportunity to make something different and really think, really stretch it, it's fun. So
Mike has a curiosity question. So besides the process, is there a stark difference between doing a decoction mash versus a multi-step mash?
Yes. So multi-step mash, which we don't have the ability to do at Beerlab, our mash tun is passive. Yeah. So multi-step, you're moving that temperature up incrementally in the mash tun primarily. With decoction, you're pulling it off into a secondary vessel to superheat it. So in our case at Beerlab, what we do is we pull off about 80 to 90 liters of mash into the boil kettle, which is direct fire. So we stand over at top of it, and we increase the temperature from about 63 degrees centigrade to 73 degrees centigrade to do a protein rest at that 73 degrees for 20 minutes. Then we superheat it again to boiling, and we boil it for about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on what type of mash we're looking for. And then that gets pumped back in. The whole time we're standing above it and stirring it in a direct fire. So you're just, there's a little bit of me and sweat particles probably in every single beer. So please don't be grossed out by that, but that's just the way it goes.
I was just thinking how hot that would be in your setup.
Yeah. If you've been to Beerlab, we've only got a platform. It's a little 2 foot by 1 foot platform, and you're just dying. So, but it's worth it, because we've done it as single mash. We've even stepped mash with adding extra water to bring it up that way. The difference with decoction is it's stark. We notice a massive difference, and so do the customers. It's not just us as brewers noticing it. It's the customer noticing the difference in the flavor.
I take it people are really enjoying it then.
Once we started having lagers on tap, I'll be honest, it's now outselling our IPA in the tap room 8-1. 8 glasses of lager to every glass of IPA that goes out. It's awesome, but scares me a little bit when we're so heavily focused on IPAs. So we find that IPAs sell out the door a lot faster to take home. Everyone likes to drink IPAs at home. That's 7.5%, 8%, 6.5%. They want to consume that at their own pace at home, where we get it. Being at the tap room, 4.7% is really attractive, because you can have a couple, maybe 3, and not feel like you're shit. Am I okay to do something else now? What's happening? So
you just recently had an anniversary, did you not?
What's today? The 7th? Technically.
7th.
So I think we open on the 8th, I believe. Milos we just kind of make the month of June. We don't actually have a physical date when we opened. We do, but we don't. Birthdays aren't a big thing in our lives between Dylan and I. Yeah, but you're right. Milos and Beerlab are celebrating 10 and 13 or 10 and 3 this year. So yeah, we had some parties planned. There's a ton of construction in London right now. I don't know if you've probably the same in your neck of the woods too. In KW area, the whole city is under construction. So they basically said no shutting down the streets. We want to have a big street party. We wanted to invite, all our buddies, Wood Brothers, Collective, Bellwoods, and just do like a big kick-ass street tent with beer that everyone can come and hang out at. Let's make the food for. But the city quashed that. So maybe it's going to be lucky 15. I don't know. Next year. Who cares? It's age is just the number. Something. So.
That's true. Age is just a number.
Yeah.
Until I do something that my body goes, you're getting old.
I feel you. Played baseball yesterday and I pulled my quad and I'm still like limping around all day today. I'm like, this is not fun. Why am I doing this? So, but yeah, so lager has been super big part of our plan this year. And I don't know what's everyone seeing out there? Are people seeing a trend? Are you all moving towards lagers as more of a day-to-day drinker? Are you seeing better lagers out there? Are there better producers of lager? I mean, obviously there's Godspeed, there's Tooth and Nail, like two that jump to my mind all the time. Bellweiser's a great one as well too. But is there other lagers that you guys are like, this is knocking my socks off right now?
They're all quiet right now.
Oh, that's okay.
There we go.
Czech style pills, yeah.
Yeah, I see it as a trend because everyone's doing it, and everyone's figured out that you have to do it really well.
Well, we've all drank mediocre lagers before. There's a reason why 3.5 is a high rating for a lager on Untapped, right?
Yeah.
I was in Montreal a couple weeks ago for the long weekend, and if you haven't been to on Saint Denis, right downtown, there's a brewery called Le Maraboire that is like the super old Czech lager house. It's been around since the late 80s. And I booked my Airbnb because I was directly across the street from it. I was kind of greedy. I wanted to be really close to a really good lager. And I got a chance to talk to the brewer and the owner. And I was like, you guys decoct? How do you guys make your beer? What's going on? And they're like, oh no, just, regular old single infusion mash. I said, okay, well, how long do you lager for? Oh, 10 days. And this is some of the best lager in the province that I've drank. So I just, there's no rhyme or reason of how this is working in my mind. Like, how are they making such great lager? What's their secret? He wasn't spilling his guts. I was pushing him.
I think the 10 days is the first part that scares everybody.
Yeah, I agree. And when I saw it, he goes, you give me the same reaction I get from everybody when I tell them that. Your jaw drops open. Yeah. It's so full and just like it tasted properly lagered, not quick lagered like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty neat.
It certainly is. And yes, you're right. He probably was never going to give anybody that secret.
I don't blame him one bit. So yeah.
So last time we chatted, you were off to Halifax. That's how far back we go.
Yes, that's right. So we haven't chatted since Halifax. So yeah, brewed in Halifax with Two Crows with Jeremy. That was quite the experience. That was a very different system, different idea. That was the lagered saison that then got lagered for 6 weeks, and then a portion of it was pulled off. 800 liters was pulled off into a foeder with grape must from a local vineyard, and sat for another 3 months, 2.5, 3 months in the foeder. So the lager was really tasty. I just don't think people are ready for that style in the Maritimes yet, because they still have it on the shelf. It's still selling right now. I talked to Jeremy the other week and he's like, it's still holding up. It tastes great. It's even better now because it's got that age. That says sort of zip to it. That's when it ages, it kind of dissipates a little bit. But but the fooder age sold out, he said, in like 3 weeks. You put it in a barrel, everyone goes bananas. So yeah, so that was a fun project. They were nice enough. Their sales rep is from Stratford. He moved out to Halifax to live with his partner, and he drove home to visit family for Christmas and brought us 2 kegs of it. So that was fun to have on tap to pour at the tap room. So cool experience, lots of fun. I think since then we did collabs with Blood Brothers and Bellwoods since then as well too. IPA with Bellwoods and the Imperial Stout, the Donut Stout with Blood Brothers this spring. So still having fun brewing beer with other people. So it's good times that way. Keeps you sane in the winter.
Yeah. And now that the world's starting to sort of reopen, it's going to be easier.
Well, let's hope.
Yeah.
Let's hope. I'm off. I was in Buffalo last weekend doing some beer stuff at the Moorpat and talking to the guys at Thin Man and seeing what's up over there. Seeing about doing some more seeing if we can start some cross-border connections and get that rolling as well, because that market is completely different. I was shocked. Buffalo is 175,000 people, and you could throw a stone anywhere and hit a brewery. There was breweries everywhere. Yeah. Dozens of breweries in that city. It's unbelievable.
Why do you think that happens that way?
That their support local is beyond anything we have in this country right now. They're so adamant about, I don't want to have to travel far. I want quality here. I want it there. I mean, they want that big city, that New York. I only go within a 2-block radius of my apartment kind of vibe in their city a little bit, right? So there's bars everywhere, pubs everywhere, breweries everywhere. And they were all full. It was busy everywhere. There was a wait everywhere we went this weekend. It was awesome to see. I loved it.
Yep.
Hopefully we can get there too. We'll see.
Yeah, that's true. We will see. What was your favorite beer there?
Favorite beer there. Well, we went to the Moorpat, which if you haven't been to the Moorpat out in the north end, I think Terry, you were just there, right? Yeah. Awesome little place, beautiful little town, northeast end of Buffalo. They own they own Coles, they own Allen Street Burger Adventure. It's kind of like a restaurant group, but it's one guy. He used to own the Blue Monk in Buffalo, if you remember ever going to that. They had Hill Farmstead on tap there. So, I mean, that was the best beer I drank was Hill Farmstead on tap up there. Best beer I had in Buffalo, from a Buffalo standpoint, there was this little brewery we went to that made a really solid Kolsch. It was like a community garden out by the pier. I can't remember. We had like 7 different places that day. It was a long day. But it was a really tight, like tasty little Kolsch, and they had a Kolsch, a Czech Pils, and a lager. All were above average from what I was expecting from what I've been tasting everywhere else. So really neat stuff out there. So it's 2.5 hours away, right? I mean, it's for you guys probably even closer. It's not a destination I think of or used to think of often. I'm going there all the time now. It's great.
My wife and I go to Buffalo on a regular basis before COVID. Now, she's like, when are we going back?
Yeah. Well, they still I was surprised at the amount of policies they had in place that we have laxed on. Yeah. Like you still have to wear a mask with a taxi or an Uber driver in New York State. A few more spots, they were like, yeah, it's best if you wear a mask inside. They're not saying you don't have to, or you have to, but it's best that you do, kind of thing. It was just still very open about wear your mask, be fine with that kind of thing. So not what I was expecting at all in America. So that was pleasant. So
it's got a couple curiosity questions going on there.
Okay.
Did you find that the breweries were doing a wide range of beers, like across the city of Buffalo, or was it a very narrow range?
No, I was wide. Everyone was brewing everything.
Yeah.
It was, I walked into a place, it must have been like 27 different, like at Thin Man, there was 30 different beers, available on tap. 15 of them were IPAs, but the other 15 were a cross section of, there were stouts, there was saisons, there were wild beers, there were sour beers, there were some dunkels. What else was on tap there? Lots of like different lagers and pilsners as well too. So everyone's doing a little bit of everything. They're trying to check all the boxes, which is fine. But
yeah.
Also,
so that goes to the second part of the question. Do you think that people in Buffalo are adventurous in their beer tasting? But it sounds like they are.
Yeah, I mean, for a town that is blue light focused, I can't believe the amount of blue light that's consumed in that city. They're really open to trying different beers. Do they want to drink really heavy IPAs all the time? I don't think so. I didn't see many people ordering super hazy beers, more than one of, but it was, it's neat. And we're going to experience hopefully totally different. We're going out to Madison, Wisconsin in 2 weeks for another festival thing out there. So whole different area. I've never been out there. I don't really know the beer scene out that neck of the woods. So I'm excited to check it out and see what's going on. So fun. See all the stuff that's going on out there.
Yes. Which one of the IPAs are we going to start with?
Let's do Wise and Otherwise.
Okay.
So this is sort of the last run of IPAs that we've brewed in this manner. We've switched how we're brewing IPAs again. I find we're doing this more frequently to try and chase what we're going for. This is Wise and Otherwise, right? Yeah, Wise and Otherwise. This is Pacific Sunrise and Mosaic, and we just got a big shipment in of lot selected Mosaic that we weren't able to go to the lot selection this year because we were brewing in Halifax. But this was lot selected with our friends at Flying Monkeys that we had agreed upon before, and we went to the virtual one with them in 2020. And so we knew exactly where we wanted to line up. They knew what we wanted, and vice versa. So they were choosing for us down there as well too. And Mosaic was the only hop we were able to get in on, but this is all lot specific Mosaic just for us. It's a little bit different than what they chose, but it's very, very close. So, and Pacific Sunrise, New Zealand, big juicy like citrus bomb, but I find a bit more tangerine than Ravaka. And also hard to get your hands on. Now it's sort of like we got four bags and see you later, So the big change for us is whirlpooling. When we did the collab in the fall with Bellwoods, our whole goal with collabs is to try and learn something. And we were always sort of shocked at how Bellwoods beers tasted so soft and so delicate compared to a lot of other people's on such a larger scale. We got talking to the guys, and they'd shifted a lot of their whirlpool into the dry hop. So most of us were doing, how much would we be doing? What, 2 kilograms on average per 5 barrel batch of whirlpool. And Bellwoods is like, oh yeah, just cut that down by do 10 times less than what you're doing. And maybe you'll kind of get what we're feeling. Take that, put it into your dry hop. Excuse me. So we started doing that. We were happy with the style and what it was doing. But we're having difficult time with carboning it, and it was just not holding together the way we wanted to. So this is the last run of beers made this way, which we're still super happy with this beer. I think it's tasting pretty okay. I like Pacific Sunrise. So you'll see in the next round of beers a different form of bitterness and malt balance and how we do stuff. So we've increased our whirlpools drastically again, and we're changing how we carbonate the beer as well. So there's a new carbonation method we're trying to use to implement a very, very soft carb into the beer. So these beers just weren't released yet when the shipment had to kind of go out. Also, we'd be doing a side by side. I'd love to do the side by side. A lot of fun, but those beers just weren't quite out yet. Yeah, I mean, it tastes like a Beerlab beer to me. And we're switching our house yeast as well too for IPAs. That's going to start changing not this round of beers, but the next round of beers. So always changing, always trying new things, seeing new ideas that are out there, seeing what we can do. Cool.
So what's the most interesting change you've seen in the industry so far this year?
Oh, the Bose steam whistle thing. That was left field. I knew it wasn't great at Bose. I didn't know it was where it was. So Steve O'Shane and I have been friends for 12 years. I was hanging out with him in Montreal. He just kind of said, I don't want to talk about it. And I said, no problem. We don't have to talk about it, but like, it's totally fine. His band was playing, so I was there to see his band. And the head brewer, Kevin James, is now at a brewery in Quebec as well. So he's happy. It's like a 10-barrel brew house. So much smaller, kind of what he started on, back to the roots a little bit there. So yeah, that steam whistle Bose thing just kind of shook the industry a little bit, I think, Oh, sorry, if you're out of the loop on this one. No, it's steam whistle bought Bose, and Bose is no longer its own family-owned company or employee-owned entity. They're purchased by Steam Whistle. They took all controlling assets and rolled it into, basically they've shut down Van Cleek Hill, and it's all being brewed at Von Bugle in Etobicoke. So when the founder of Steam Whistle came back about 3 or 4 years ago, after the Von Bugle whole thing happened and they were falling apart, he closed Von Bugle. Basically, that was just like an extra facility to brew Steam Whistle at. And so they were taking on contracts. That's where Fat Tire's being brewed and a few other national brands like that. And then Bose started brewing there a couple of years ago to help meet demand. Yeah. So I'm excited to see what they do with the brand, especially when it's two directly competing brands. Sure, Kolsch and Pilsner are not the same thing, but they're fighting for the same audience, basically. That easy drinking gateway craft beer. So I'm excited to see what they do with it. Steam Whistle doesn't really make too many wrong moves in my book. They're pretty strong company. So, and Erica is a fantastic brewer. She is brilliant on a brew floor. So
yes, that's true. She is very good at what she does. Yeah. I mean, do you see more consolidation happening in the craft beer industry?
Absolutely. I think over the next 5 years, the landscape's going to change big time. Like we already, was it Lost Craft and somebody else just merged, and that's a group buying them all up to amalgamate them. Bell City just got bought by an American beverage company trying to make a foothold in Canada. They tried to buy Railway City, but they couldn't come to a final deal. You're going to see it more and more often as the breweries that have the infrastructure maybe don't have the sales capacity, but need that help, need that influx of cash to make the sales happen. I think you'll still always have the small guys. You'll always have the Beerlabs, the Wood Brothers, the Rouge Rivers, the Badlands, the Merritts, all these guys are going to be there. But you'll see like the middle ground get merged together a bit more. So I think it has to happen.
Now that's a pretty upfront statement. It has to happen.
It has to happen. There's too many breweries. There's too many breweries making too many of the same beers. So someone's gonna have to give, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of great breweries out there. There's a lot of breweries that I don't want to see merge and amalgamate. It's not that has to be a bad thing either. You can also gain market share. You can gain a bigger audience. You can make better beers. If brewery A has really strong sales and brewery B has really strong brewing, and vice versa, they don't have either, like each one doesn't have what the other one has, merge it together, all of a sudden you have a much better playing field, much better beer for the consumer. That's the number one thing in my mind, is that if the beer gets better, the consumer is going to be happier. They're going to buy more beer. That's what's happening in the States. The beer is getting better. It's not just, dish soapy IPAs and, dirty dish raggy IPAs that I was used to 10 years ago, which we're all probably drinking going, why is anyone buying this?
Jen's curious if you think any of the smaller players are going to get bought.
Small players. So as a very small brewery, no one's knocking on my door, and I don't have the dollars. I don't have the volume. I don't have the name recognition. We have a small niche thing going on. That's awesome. But, being bought up is something that these marketing companies or sales companies are going to look at as, how do I grow this brand quickly and biggest ROI? That's what they're going to be looking for. And Beerlab, even guys like Third Moon and Badlands with their cash in, like their name, like that's huge. They don't have, their debt load is too high. Our debt load's too high. Who am I kidding? We're too new. We haven't had time to pay that debt load down yet. So.
So what other changes have you seen in the craft beer industry in the last couple of years?
So one thing I'm really, we're talking about this today, Adil and I, what Aaron Broadfoot's doing and starting to talk about openly and publicly and getting stuff out there about the problem in this industry. And the problem in many industries, not just beer, it's in every industry. And the fact that Aaron is out there talking about it day in and day out with Ren and other people, those are just the two most vocal people we see in the scene talking about it. I think it's very powerful. I think it's needed. It has to happen. Luckily I haven't worked anywhere where it's been like that, but I definitely have heard lots of rumors, and all the places that we're getting, put on notice, called out, whatever term you want to use, I'd all heard of all that stuff going on there. This wasn't news, but I wasn't saying anything, and that's wrong. I should have been saying something about it. We all should be saying something about it, in my mind. So that's another big change that I think is going to be beneficial. We wash out the bullshit. We move forward. We get a better, more inclusive industry, place, everything. It's just going to be beneficial for everybody, and not just in the month of June, not just in February, not just in the token months, 12 months out of the year. Let's do it all the time. So it's frustrating to hear your friends get so upset about stuff like this. So
It certainly is. I hear you on that.
Yeah, it's not to say that it's not a good trend or a bad trend. It's good to see. This is just good to see it being done finally, and people taking it seriously and being held to account. So, in like beer trends, physically in brewing and beer. I think what I'm seeing is people getting more into, it's one of two things. We're trying to get more extreme. We're trying to get into more rare and extreme products. We're using Spectrum again. We're getting back into this whole Spectrum train, flowable hop product that goes into the dry hop. We're trying to get back in. We're trying to get our hands on Phantasm and work with Phantasm. Basically, it's dried grape skins from New Zealand and this whole, I don't know if everybody saw what Escarpment Labs did with their thiol enhanced yeast, which has been going on in the US for quite some time, but Canada hasn't approved it for use because it's bioengineered. So it's not a naturally occurring yeast. They bioengineer it. So it's not been approved in Canada yet. That doesn't mean that Canadian breweries aren't using it. The border's not that far. It's pretty easy to go back and forth with homebrew supplies. So that is, I think, where we're heading in the more extreme experimental, what's all this new product stuff. That's what we've always been about. And then I see guys like Callum in Sonnet making these incredibly simple beers. Justin at Matron, local ingredients that are back to basics, but making it so well that you just want to drink it all the time. The Matron beers, what Justin's doing up there is blowing my mind, how soft and how delicate these beers are. And I think that's going to be where the paths are going to change for a lot of people. You're either going to kind of follow one path or the other. Luckily for us, our mandate is we can follow both. We don't have to do one or the other. We can be a Beerlab and go old school and go au naturel and go really weird and experimental and funky. But that's sort of what I see is people are going to follow these two paths and kind of move in that way. You can make beautiful beers and you can make fun experimental beers that get the high ratings. That's what I'm seeing. So now I just want to drink Sun and Hill beer right now. I'm not going to lie. I just want to drink that stout. If you haven't tried that stout from this latest release, unbelievable. It's so Cloudwater-esque. It's beautiful.
Is it because he has better water?
I think it's because he's got a better hand at brewing than most people in this province.
Yes.
Yeah, but, his water probably is a huge part in the bill. It's a huge part. His training, being at different breweries around Europe, seeing what different places can do. I mean, I've lived a sheltered life when it comes to brewing. So has Adil. So have many brewers. I mean, don't get to travel and brew around the world. Callum has been lucky and got to go to all these great places and brew and experience top-notch breweries and brew with great brewers. So that's super. It translates to the beers big time.
Yeah. And his willingness to learn and do those things when he came back here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're expanding that brewery all the time. I know he just bought a canning line, so he's going to be. He was shipping, bringing in like a mobile canning company, but now he's got his own canning line, so he can can more frequently when it's ready, not on someone else's schedule, and that's our biggest problem. Don't love being on someone else's time frame. Let's can it when it's ready, not because it's every 3 weeks that the machine comes. I hate that. But.
Where would you put a canning line?
It wouldn't exist. We talked about getting like a Gosling or like a very small single head.
Yeah. And
I went to Barn Cat to go visit Jeremy and see when they got theirs. And he just looked at me and he was like, "Don't do this." I talked to Mark up at Wood Brothers, and I was just up there on my way to Montreal and met everybody and hung out. And I met with the guys, Sankey and Baron came down as well too. They were brewing a collab that day. It was just perfect timing. So we were all talking and looking at this Gosling, and you could just see the hatred in the eyes of everyone at that brewery for this machine. the money they invested in this machine, 65 to 75,000, depending on what kind of accoutrements you get with it. And they're just like, it's a piece of crap. It doesn't work. Oh, just the frustration. I was like, okay, whew, dodged a bullet. So
yeah, we all don't have the luxury like Sam up at Sada City to buy the $1 million machine, eh?
I'm telling you, whenever you have a chance to go to Barrie, take the tour at Flying Monkeys just to see their new canning line, their $2.6 million canning line with a robotic mechanical arm that they put on. They do it on it has a display mode. They just showed me this the other week when I was up there. And I'd seen it running before, but not on the display mode. So the display mode is really cool because it does it in slow motion. So it moves through all the steps in slow motion. You're like, wow, that's pretty quick. And then it goes up to full speed. And then you can barely see the arm move. It's going so quickly. It is mind-boggling, this feat of engineering that they put in there. It's so cool. So cool.
Yep.
But yeah, to have money is number one thing.
Going nowhere for something.
Going nowhere for something. Mosaic again. When you get a big shipment of Mosaic, you use a lot of Mosaic. But this one was also with Idaho gem. New hop to us, new hop to everyone in the province, basically. Bob Latimer from Hops Connect did a really good job of selling this hop to everybody. I saw Third Moon putting it out. I saw Badlands using it. I saw a bunch of people using it. Excuse me. We love Idaho 7. So we're like, well, let's give this a try. Let's see what's up. It's way more like raspberry, the raspberry candies, those kind of like sugary raspberry candy kind of deal. That's what, out of the bag, that's what it gave me. Mosaic's kind of taken over on this a little bit, but yeah, I got a touch sweeter, even though these beers finished exactly the same Plato. These beers are like, this one just tastes a little bit sweeter because of that Idaho gem to me. It's like, it's got that fruity sweetness that I'm into. So
that's intriguing.
It's a fun beer. It's weird and different, and the blueberry the blueberry strawberry of the Mosaic playing with like the raspberry of this is kind of like my mom's jam when she would like be almost out of fruit and couldn't make enough jam to finish. There was that 1 or 2 jars of like the hodgepodge jam that those were always the best ones to me because it was all the leftovers from mom's freezer jams. Oh, so you guys just had Rob on the other week, right?
Yes, we did.
What's going on with Rob?
Like everybody else in the industry,
yeah,
he's trying to navigate through to what our new normal is going to look like.
Yeah.
And Rob's having, I guess the best way to do is an adjustment problem because he's actually moved from being a brewer to being a marketer in his mind. Is you have to market now. Can't just brew beer. You're gonna and in his words, to paraphrase it, he's not 100% certain where short finger fits in this new world that we all live in.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I get it. He's at a crossroads. He's got the brewery is now a venue, hosting shows and having bands play all the time, which I think is fantastic. In the States, every brewery hosts shows. I was at a brewery show on the weekend. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Acoustics sucked, but whatever. It's loud enough. You're good.
He doesn't have an acoustic problem because it reverberates out of the building everywhere.
It's fine. Yeah. But I talked to Rob a couple months ago at a concert in London that he came down for. he was just telling me how it was like, it's weird. I can not do events and do shows and keep going as per usual, or I can have people come in and all of a sudden there's 150 people here all buying my beer and having a good time and listening to music, and I can make money and pay my staff. I'm like, hey, that's awesome. Be fluid, get a new idea, roll with the punches. And it's awesome he has the space to do that. I love that space at Short Fingers. It's great. It's such a cool yeah.
That is such a fantastic space, but it is a little bit of a workable nightmare.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. And he's got a constraint called a single washroom. So you can imagine when you get 150 people in that space,
yep,
it can become a problem.
Yeah, that's the joy of the Buy the Glass license we just found out. I was talking with the guys at Anderson, and they were asking, like, their general manager is a good friend of mine, and she was asking me, I want to serve other people's beer. How do I pour you beer on tap? How do I do like wine for people who don't want beer? I said, well, you have to get a Tight House license. She's like, but my owner Gavin won't let it happen. And I'm like, well, I don't know what the deal is, so you need to figure that out. She came back to me a month later and said, we found out what the problem is. So you have three options as a brewery. You can be sample only license, you can be By the Glass, or you can be a Tight House. So Tight House is just a regular bar license. You follow the same rules as a bar or restaurant. By the Glass, there is a leeway there. So with my Tight House license, I have to adhere to what the municipality tells me is my capacity, which they then tell the APO, and then I have to post that. When they come in, if I'm over that capacity, I get fined. But By the Glass license, you can now serve 20-ounce pints of beer. You can serve them as, before the old rule was 12-ounce pints only, 12-ounce glasses only, 2 glasses per visit. That's it. That was the rule. That rule then changed with the new current government, the rollover government, that it's now 20-ounce pints, smart serve applied. So if someone can handle 2 or 3 or 4 beers, it's up to them. You don't have to post your capacity though. You can have one washroom. You can have 180 people in there. Whatever the fire marshal says is okay. And the fire marshal looks at the overall square footage of the building and says, huge building, everyone's safe. So 180 people or 120 people, 100, whatever. Yeah. So that's why we don't serve other people's beer or have wine by the glass at Anderson. So that was super cool. I'm like, that's a good answer. I didn't know that. So I love learning.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to ask Derek's question only because I've got an idea in the back of my head what it would be. How many beers would you guys have to sell to buy a $2.6 million canning line?
Whatever. And like keep the lights on and keep people paid and keep running the operation, or just like flat out have many cans?
Let's just go flat out having the cans.
Well, 5, let's, after taxes and all the other expenses of a beer, we're looking at maybe like, after we pay the canning company, profit off of a can of beer for us is very low because of the canning line coming in. If we were to just do this, let's just call it, $3 a can is what we're making off that can, if we're very lucky. So 3 times whatever, divided into whatever that number is going to be, right? That's where it's going to be at. So a lot of cans of beer. A few years before we can afford to buy that outright.
Yeah. Mike just piped in and said, well, actually your kids would be buying the canning line, not you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't have children except for this guy right here. Oh, you see Hank? Hold on, Hank. There you are, buddy. You've probably seen Hank in all of our social media posts. He's just he's a little bit tired. He's had a weekend with his brother, and his brother outweighs him by 20 pounds. So he's 150, brother's 170. So it's a bit of a gong show when they get together. So
wow. So I do have a question for you that you've done a number of interviews, so I'd like to know, is there a question that you wish someone, like people would ask you that people don't ask you?
Mm. Sure. People don't ask me, is beer your favorite beverage? Everyone just assumes because as I own a brewery and I'm a brewer, that's my favorite beverage, but it's not. It's not my favorite beverage. So, wine is my first love. Wine is my big first time passion, and it's still my number one drink of choice. So, yeah, no one's ever asked me that kind of a question before. Like, it's just always, you're a brewer, you must love beer. Yeah, I like beer a lot. It's good, but I love wine. So
why didn't you become a winemaker?
Because I prefer being trapped at the brewery 12 months out of the year, as opposed to, in a winery, it's only 3 months out of the year. So I really like to be trapped at all times. I like to be tied down fully, as opposed to just temporarily. It's like being a reverse teacher, being a winemaker. Your summers are on, and then you're off the rest of the year. So
I'd never looked at winemaking that way, because I've always seen it as almost a 12-month commitment, because there's so many things you have to do. But I get what you're saying. Yes, you decided to mortgage your soul to have a brewery so that you could spend 18 hours a day, 7 days a week for the rest of your life.
I said I didn't want children, but I built a huge child that needed my full attention. So, yeah, no, I didn't want to become a winemaker because I didn't have winemaking, as is beer making. The chemistry aspect of winemaking is so dependent on nature. With winemaking, there's things you can do after the fact, but you're so reliant on that harvest. If that harvest year is bad, you can try and salvage it, but that wine is not going to be as good as the previous 2 years. You can't improve a bad harvest. With beer, you can make changes to make improvements. You can make alterations. You can change your recipes. You can alter things. So yeah, that's sort of where my head was at with that. And we didn't want to live in Niagara. Jess, my partner, didn't want to move to Niagara, which we had talked about. I had a job offer to go and run a winery in Niagara on the Lake, and it just didn't work out. So that happened. So now we got Beerlab. So second place, not so bad.
Gonna say, you have your child. I hear you.
And I see all this chatter about gin. Yes, gin is like top notch, absolutely top notch. So
it's so much easier to make. You just need a bathtub.
So I don't know how much like you guys hang out at different distilleries. Like we have 2 in the city now, and one's right attached to Powerhouse. It's called Paradigm, and I was buying gins and vodkas from different places and trying it all out, and not really being blown away too much by the product. Like the vodkas always tasted like the gin, just on a lighter scale and all this sort of stuff. And then I got talking to the owners of Paradigm, and they're 2 women technically from your neck of the woods, from Waterloo. They worked at one of the tech companies, retired. They were executives, retired, took their retirement money and partnered up with the guys at Kellogg's and built this distillery. They said, "You ever notice how gin and vodka at all these places all taste very similar?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, 2 different stills. The instant you start making anything else in a gin still, it pits. The acids are so strong it pits a lot of the still. Even the copper stills, it'll pit it and impart that flavor into the kettle, which then is transferred onto the next batch of vodka or whatever you're making. So they have a dedicated gin still, and then they're larger still for everything else. And I was like, oh, this is why I can drink your product and not feel like I'm just drinking one thing. So I didn't know anything about that. So that was super cool to learn. So
Always amazing the tidbits of information you can pick up from people.
Yeah, the industries are all crossing over and everyone's talking about everything. I mean, gin cocktails are huge right now. Like RTDs are just blowing up at the LCBO, ready to drink beverages. And they went from, I think they said it was 80 selection before. In 2020, 2021, it went to 140. And this year it's going to be over 240 selection of RTDs in the LCBO selection list. Like, that's massive, huge growth in an industry and it's all alcohol, like neutral alcohol based or vodka based or gin based. It can't be malt based like our seltzer is. So it's very interesting to see, like Flying Monkeys, they released a seltzer line, all neutral grain spirit based. They got a grain distillation license, and they package it themselves out there. So it's I prefer fermented RTDs, but that's just me.
Do you think that's going to be the way some of the more larger craft brewers survive, is by moving into being sort of an all-purpose house?
So look at Muskoka, GLB. I mean, Mill Street was already doing it before they got bought. Yeah. These every one of these guys have a distillery inside of the brewery already. They're already doing that. They've been doing that for years. Like GLB, Matt Bod, who was the general manager and brewer at Bar Hop in Toronto, when Bar Hop closed their doors at COVID, beginning of COVID, he needed to find work, so he went to GLB, and he's now distilling all of their seltzers and all that stuff out there. So, it's definitely it's a moneymaker. They're inexpensive to produce, and you can charge fair market value for that product, right? So it's definitely a trend. Making seltzers is fun. It's different for us, and our customers love having for the summer that sort of crystal clear glass of beverage to drink. So we sell a ton of it in the summertime. But yeah,
Nick, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to share your stories with us this evening. We all appreciate the gift of your time. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, everybody. That was a lot of fun. Yeah. So we'll see everybody again soon. Come down to the brewery. Come to Milosh's, eat a burger. Come to our place.
The best cheeseburger